Oh, hey everyone, Donji Corleone here. Sorry I fell asleep. It's just that I fell asleep because this was a film I watched that was boring, not scary, stupid, badly directed, badly written, and badly acted. Nothing about this movie spelled scary. It was 86 minutes and nothing. It was, of course, a horror film that was produced and written by Oren Shiti, the guy behind Paranormal Activity, so I guess that makes sense why there's nothing scary. Because this guy can't make anything scary at all. Sucks as a director. And he's decided to produce a horror film for some weird reason in Chernobyl, called Chernobyl Diaries. That's today's Halloween horror episode. And our epic rants. What is the plot of Chernobyl Diaries? Well, it's about these three Americans, one of them named Chris, played by Jesse McCartney. Many 2000s kids should remember. His girlfriend and this girlfriend's friend, they're going all across Europe. Though they stop in Ukraine to visit his brother Paul, and the next morning, Chris is about to go to Moscow to propose to Natalie. But Paul, who's basically the biggest dumbass of the group and one of the biggest dumbasses in horror ever, he's like, hey, before y'all go to Moscow, you guys want to go on a tour to Chernobyl? And like, Jesse McCartney's like, no, I don't want to go to Chernobyl, I want to go to Moscow, I already talked about this. But they basically, his girlfriend and his girlfriend's friend persuade him to accept the Chernobyl idea anyway. Like, Jesse McCartney's the only one of these four with common sense. Why the hell would anyone want to go on a tour to Chernobyl? Of all places to go to. The place is fucking dangerous. It's full of radiation. So, and plus, that's a real tragedy that happened there. Leave that place the fuck alone. But they don't, so they go with this tour guide named Yuri, and this other couple on the tour as well, and Yuri explains that because of radiation levels, they're only going to Pripyat, which is right near Chernobyl. So they go by van. They get stopped by the military. They tell them to leave, which they should leave, but Yuri just doesn't want to leave because he clearly wants the sweet tour money. So he goes on an alternative route, and they spend a day taking photographs of all the places in Pripyat. Yuri then immediately decides we have to go back. Just as they're about to go back, we have a horror cliche where the van won't start. They discover that the engine got sabotaged. Oh no, I didn't see that coming. Wow. And they discover they are stranded, no one knows where they are, but they're not alone. Yep, this is pretty much a American disaster horror film that's directed by Brad Parker. This is like the one film he did, but it's co-written and produced by Oren Shiti. I say Oren Pelly, or I like to call him Oren Shiti because he's a shit director at horror films. And prior to the film's release, many people at Chernobyl centers said the film was way too insensitive to those who died or got injured in the disaster, and they pretty much capitalized on events that had tragic human consequences, but Oren Pelly said this film was done with respect for the victims. What respect was there, idiots? Others describe the film as this plot mess of disaster porn, or it's like there, and seriously, okay. A horror film set in an abandoned area called Chernobyl, maybe not a bad idea, but the problem is, this one feels really insulting. This actually is kind of insulting. I'm sure any director that was actually good would probably make one that was actually respectful to the victims. Because the Chernobyl tragedy ain't a joke. Oren Pelly must have thought it was. But, guess what, guys? Oren Pelly kind of got karma, because when this released on May 25th, audiences and critics fucking hated it. And it did not make really good profit, because it only made 37 million worldwide, but it had a $1 million budget. So, yeah, that's kind of successful, but that still really isn't that really profitable. Now that's my reaction, Chernobyl Diaries is an example where you should, if you're going to make a horror film about a real place, Don't try and make it some zombie outbreak. If you're gonna make a horror film based off a real-life tragedy. Hell, you know what? Not only does this movie suck and it's not scary, this movie literally rips off several horror films. This movie rips off Wrong Turn, and this movie rips off The Hills Have Eyes. Just set in Chernobyl. And you know something about Chernobyl Diaries? I know that it's not a found footage movie, but with the way the camera gets held and how the camera work happens, you might as well just call it a found footage horror film. You might as well just call it that. Most of the time. Because most of the time the camera work really feels found footage because it's horribly filmed. That's how badly filmed this movie is. Yeah, it even has the point of views of a found footage movie. So, yeah, this might as well just be a found footage film. Because it literally feels exactly like one. It even starts off like one. A lot of the scenes of Chernobyl feel like one. The one time it doesn't is when the movie ends. This was the directorial debut of Brad Parker. And like after this movie, he hasn't directed a single damn thing at all. The only original aspect is the setting, and there's not much else new. There's not even good lighting. Like, this film is so badly lit, like you can barely see what the fuck's going on. Yeah, it's at night, but at least still try to have some good lighting. Instead of just a bunch of flashlights carried by the actors. Like, oh my god. Like, did any of the film crew even watch one documentary of Chernobyl before making this film? Like, yeah. Did they even watch a lot of the disaster or something, or even know much of the disaster? But it just does nothing new to the horror genre, has a lot of the same horror cliches, and when it tries to do horror, it barely makes an impression because this movie's not scary. There's like, most of the scares are just your typical shocks. There's nothing shocking, and you can see any attempted lazy scares coming a mile off. Oh, and the character development? There's no character development, and you don't care what happens to these so-called characters because they're all so stupid. Yeah, like, let's totally trust this illegal tour guide to take us to a radiation-filled area that the military tells you not to go into, but you don't listen anyway. So they bought all this stupid shit on themselves. Like, you know what? Most of this movie could have been long avoided. Except the characters are just too stupid to try to think of a real alternative. Like most of the film. Yeah, let's use up all the car battery let's use up the car battery by leaving the car lights on. Let these mutant people know where we are. And let's drain and kill the car battery. Our tour guide, and Jesse McCartney, we're gonna go out and we're gonna go check on those. And then later, tour guy's dead, Jesse McCartney's injured, and then of course, looking for more like jolts and stuff, or car supplies. Then they realize that the car got hijacked, but they still don't leave. No, I can't go without my brother. Your brother's fucking dead because of you. Yeah, your brother died because you basically forced him to go on this fucking tour in the first place. Hell, you know what? Even Jesse McCartney actually legitimately calls out the brother character, tells him that he's a hazard in one scene before he goes off and gets injured. Like, literally. Yeah, that's how unlikable this character is. This brother character is. So I can kind of side with McCartney's character on that. That the twists and scares are just so predictable. And pretty much, if you're like a horror fan, you've pretty much seen a whole bunch of these scares. And the only one that's really effective, that's original, is, I guess, the scene with the bear. And that's it. Now, how do we start this film off? We start off Horseshit Diaries with our three main characters going all across Europe. And then we get a found footage montage of all this happening. Then, during the whole trip, they literally stop right at Ukraine to visit our asshole brother character. Yeah, our obnoxious guy. Before they're about to go to Moscow to propose. Then, the next morning, after like one night, of nothing really happening except meeting our dumbass characters. Paul suggests they all go on this illegal tour against, but Jesse McCartney is long against the idea. Would rather stay on the original plan to go to Moscow because he's the only one that's actually smart. But the two girls are like, come on, let's go on a tour to Chernobyl. We might as well see everything while we're here. No! How about you just go to Moscow and don't go on this stupid idea, please? But, of course, they basically forced McCartney to go along with it. Because, Paul and the girls insist he go along with it, basically. So they basically force him against his will. Yeah, these are good characters. So they meet the tour guide named Yuri, and they get joined by this bland backpacking couple. You don't really care about them either. So Yuri drives them through Ukraine, and then they arrive at the checkpoint. But there's, the military is like, no, you're not entering here. Get out, go back where you came from. But Yuri decides, wait, you know what? I'm going to take them on a secret shortcut. We're going to go an alternate way. We're not allowed in this way, but don't worry, guys. You're still going to have your tour. No, how about you just go back? How about just go back the way you came and just listen to the military? Just don't do this tour because it's clearly not a good idea. Yep, apparently he discovered this one years ago. And then once you meet Paul, this guy is literally the reason every bad thing in this movie happens. All this character literally does is fuck shit up. Let's all go on this illegal tour to a forbidden radiation area where a horrific tragedy happened to many. No, instead of just going to Moscow now, these two girls are even stupid, and McCartney's actually the one with sense and actually wants to leave. Right there. And they should have, these two girls should have listened to McCartney. Oh my god. McCartney's the only smart one of this group who doesn't want to go there. But he basically gets forced to go along with his shitty brother's idea. Chernobyl Diaries could have been entertaining if it didn't resort to the same style where you keep having misleading dominoes effects. It'd be easy to hide behind a dark corner, but it keeping the viewer curious, the endless desire for a final explanation, just wrap the situation into something that's literally not. Or the tour guide, not shockingly, the tour guide is obviously the first to die. And the remaining people, they're obviously just stupid and make such stupid mistakes. That's a lot of horror films I've seen. It's the basic don't go in their thought process that's in a horror flick. Wrong Turn and Hills Have Eyes. This one is just done really painfully. And this Oren Shiti, I don't care for him as a director. I thought he did a shitty job with Paranormal Activity, which I think is one of the most boring found footage films ever made, that somehow got praise, and I don't know why. It's every screenplay he's turned out just turns into ruin. And that's evident here with Chernobyl Diaries. Right here, because this guy can't even try to come up with anything scary. The tour guide does seem to know more than what he's letting on, and there's no twist to his character. You really expect, once, after the first time they're stranded, he disappears, maybe he'll pop up later, but then, of course, it turns out, yep, he's dead. They're all screwed. So, on their tour, the group then stops at a river, and Yuri reports out this large mutated fish that's able to live on land. That should still be a warning sign to stop at the tour. And returning to their van, several other mutant fish are seen. And the group is worried about radiation poisoning. Then why did you go on this tour in the first place if you're so scared of that? I don't know why. Yuri assures them that they're safe. Don't worry, we're all safe. Because they have this little counter machine. And spending this few hours exploring, Yuri then takes him to the floor of an apartment building and shows him the Chernobyl nuclear plant on the near horizon. And after they hear noises in the end of the apartment, it turns out that's the bear scene you get, and a bear just runs through the apartment and runs through the hallway past them, and it doesn't really harm them at all. So now, the group is about to finally leave and go back, which they honestly should have just did earlier. But guess what? Horror cliche? The wires are destroyed? Oh no! They got chewed through! And he tries to call his radio for help, no avail. Oh no! There's no help on the radio! Oh, I didn't see that coming! Come on, somebody has to know why we're here. And then Yuri tells them, I work alone. What? Really? How is that not obvious? My God, it's so predictable. Nothing new here. There's nothing new. Then night falls. They're stupidly using up their hijack car battery. It's like leaving the lights on to further strand themselves, apparently. They decide whether to hike to a nearby checkpoint, which is like 12 miles away, or stay put and wait for help. You know what? You guys have flashlights. Nobody's coming to get your asses. So how about you just use your flashlights on your phones and hike your way back? Just hike your way there. Would be easier than staying put and just getting further and just waiting for more mutant fuckers to come for you guys. Then strange noises come from outside. Yuri goes out to investigate and Chris even follows, and that's when Chris finally snaps at Paul, which honestly, I don't feel bad for his ass. He deserves it. Don't give a fuck about him. Fuck this brother character. This guy's the reason they're all stuck there in the first place. Technically speaking, it's the two girls' faults too for persuading McCartney to go with the idea as well. So, kind of wish he yelled at them too. The reason they're all stuck there in the first place. So Paul goes out to investigate, returns with now McCartney's injured leg, and apparently Yuri got taken by something. So they stay the night in their locked vehicle. Dogs attack their van. Terror. Like, it's like this whole scene wants you to suddenly feel bad for Paul, but I fucking don't. Like, this guy basically is the reason they're all stuck there in the first place. And besides, that's not the only stupid thing he does. He's the reason just everybody dies in the film. He's the reason they all got in this mess in the first place, so fuck this guy. The film just goes from cliche to cliche when the characters stumble around and they fall through a bunch of endless plot holes in the area. Right there. It's like the whole places they end up at, getting chased into, are all a bunch of buildings called Plot Hole Building 1, Plot Hole Building Number 2, Plot Hole Building Number 3, Plot Hole Reactor. Like, seriously, like, the only scares you get here, the shock scares I mentioned. Loud noises. Some random scary themes and images that fade into hilarious obscurity because of the mutant shitty designs. Like, Chernobyl Diaries is a film that gets worse as it progresses. It starts off bad, and it just gets worse from there. It's like every scene just sinks the movie into stupidity, irrationality, and cliches. It's not entertaining, like there's no humor here. Like, the only funny thing is that how horribly designed the monsters look, even though they barely show any of them. These guys look like a bunch of meat with a bunch of Corey Taylor's melted masks onto them. And the pacing is odd, because that shows how cheaply this film was made. Most of the time, the characters do nothing but wander in the day, run through the dark at night, and there's direct conflict in the whole film for a few brief scenes, and there's lengthy shots of abandoned apartment buildings where the heroes stand outside them, and either it feels like the movie was shot in a single day or night with no budget, or just basically just trying to drag on a scene they shot. And aside a low budget, it's the fact you never get more than a glimpse of our humanoid enemies. The makeup effects are disappointing. There's many wasted opportunities and dangling threads. Will the bites from the dogs or the fish have strange effects? No. One of the guys gets bitten by it, and nothing happens to him after that. The eerie little girl standing with her back to them, destructive or lure them suddenly turn around to reveal a face, or his inhumanity as she retreats into the shadows? No. The moron brother, after Jesse McCartney does get kidnapped and I guess murdered off screen, he's trying to look for his brother who's obviously dead and gone. Will this guy realize that they're just going to get in more trouble if they don't just leave? No. You just wait for them to stand around, talk about their predicament in this dark, dead alley before anything happens. So anyway, the next morning after the dog attack, Paul, Michael, and Amanda, they go out to look for Yuri. They follow this trail of blood to a cafeteria, and guess what? Yuri's dead! Wow! So they take his gun, and they get chased by a creature through the building. They return to the van. Amanda checks her camera. Apparently there's a humanoid creature inside one of the apartment buildings. Natalie, though, stays with Chris because Chris is injured, or McCartney's injured. The others begin to hike to the checkpoint. And during the hike, they find this parking lot. They find parts for Yuri's van. On the way back, the dogs chase them, and one of them gets attacked by mutant fish, but the bite doesn't really do a thing. Night then falls. The group returns to the van, but it's ripped to shreds. It's upside down. Oh no! And they find Natalie's video camera, because obviously she and Chris were attacked, and Chris was likely killed by the humanoid mutants. And so, they search for the two inside an old building, and the group gets chased by more mutants. So, but the one thing with these mutants I'll give credit for, at least this wasn't just some other zombie virus movie. At least they didn't do just another zombie virus again, because that was being done to death around the time this came out, so at least they didn't do that with the mutants. And the thing is, Chernobyl, if this was done by a director that seemed like he actually cared, then maybe it wouldn't be so insulting. Right there. They actually tried to still have some respect for the tragedy that happened. The monsters in the movie, like, they just feel like people, well, technically speaking, in the twist ending, it turns out they're literally people that were victims of experiments from the military. And logic would devise being kept in apparently this lab all their life would give a taste for, apparently, wouldn't that give a taste for something like cardboard food and not human stuff? If you were trapped in some facility, and then eventually somehow, weird, unexplained reason, they somehow escape with no explanation as to why. Like, most of like, when you do see them, all you get a bunch of pale bald heads in dark uniforms. For when you see these mutants, or patients. Yeah, like, less is more is sometimes better, but wouldn't it be nicer to see a scene where they stumble on a dead one, so they get a good look at what they're really looking at? And of course, like, oh my god, and no. Here's the thing. If this had, like, maybe a Silent Hill approach, I wish this was kind of done by the director of Silent Hill. Like, maybe then it would probably feel like a better Silent Hill sequel. Because, like, guess maybe this could have been interesting. Like, this could have worked as another decent Silent Hill film adaptation. If it had a Silent Hill-like tone. You do have kind of a Silent Hill-like setting. Ugh. But if it wasn't done by Oren Shiti. But Oren Shiti had to get involved, so you end up with a poor storyline and a waste of time. Like, the acting is pretty bad, but the screenplay is also much at fault. Like, our extreme tourists, they don't get much material to work with. There are no other scenes where they're just joking about. They just feel like this improv session at film class. Nothing special about the creatures. You barely get good glimpses at any of them. It's hard to imagine, like, going up, like, seriously, like, this film, releasing this film too around the same time as stuff like The Avengers or Men in Black, around the time this came out, this was released around the same month as those movies. Yeah, this was this was totally going to make good profit against those films. It did not. Men in Black crushed its ass, and obviously Avengers crushed its ass more because it was still playing very strong during the time it was in theaters. Like, then again, 2012 wasn't really that great of a year for horror films anyway. It ain't shocking, besides, because remember, guys, this is not the only shitty horror film that came out that 2012. 2012, we had The Devil Inside, The Devil in Horse Shit to start it off. Then, August, like months after this, we had The Apparition. or House on the Street, the first VHS movie. What else I think of? Well, the only decent horror film from 2012 was Cabin in the Woods. Yeah, Cabin in the Woods was like the one decent horror film of that year. Yeah. May have been a good year for films, but not a good year for horror. Now, anyways, guys, here is our finale. Now, apparently there was another one planned, but we're watching the theatrical movie, so the one I'm explaining is the theatrical version's ending. So, while they're trying to escape Chernobyl, they find, like, Natalie all traumatized, but they rescue her. The group gets distracted by this young girl. So they leave Natalie's ass all alone, and she gets captured again. And they get swarmed by this horde of mutants and forced to retreat. Michael gets captured, then he probably gets killed off. Then Chris' engagement ring for Natalie, no sign of Chris. So he's probably dead. They should probably stop trying to find him, because he's now dead and gone. So they climb this ladder, but these mutant dogs, they kill Zoe, the other one of the couple, the last of the couple, and so the two have to leave her behind, and there's some random sad music in the background, as if we're supposed to give a shit about this character, as if we had a connection to this character, but we don't. We know nothing about her, plus she was not really worth rooting for, like every other character in this movie ain't worth rooting for. But then eventually, and of course, after that, they emerge from this passage that turns out to be right beside the nuclear reactor core. The exposed one. And their whole little machine thing starts going off crazy because it's detecting all the radiation, and their skin starts to blister. They're starting to not be able to see shit. Their faces are starting to burn. But they keep moving. Somehow they're still able to kind of decently see where they're going and know where the fuck they're going. And they're still able to walk just fine for some weird reason. Wouldn't they be like collapsing and slowly dying if they were in this reactor? And then they find Natalie's body, so she's dead, and they're mutant attackers that you can barely fucking see. Confront them, so they fight them off. Then as they escape, they encounter the military outside the reactor building. But now Paul's blind because Paul's now blind by the radiation. Well, yeah, like, and the movie clearly wants you to feel bad for them, but honestly, like, Paul's the one that's caused all the bad things to happen in this movie, so it's impossible to really care about him. They kind of bought all their own deaths onto themselves. They were told not to go into Chernobyl. They went to Chernobyl anyway. Right there, it's clear that the brother was dead. It's clear that McCartney was dead, but Paul insisted they keep going to find him. And now they're all blind by radiation or killed by the mutants and are about to be shot by military. Oh yeah. Paul can't see. He stumbles to his shoulders and he's shot and he's killed. And then Amanda falls unconscious. And then awakens on a gurney. Where you have several there. And this was like one of the worst endings in a damn horror film I've remotely seen. Several doctors in hazmat suits, they inform her she's in a hospital and they're gonna help her. But in their own language, they reveal that the creatures are actually escaped patients from the disaster that they had been capturing and experimenting on. And they realize she knows too much. We can't let her leave. We have to kill her ass. Yeah, basically, because, like, she saw them, and they even asked her, does anyone else know you're here? She replies no. Yeah, when she replies, like, as soon as you reply no, if you see these guys, if you're in her shoes, you know you're fucked. There's, like, so basically, yeah, they're like, she's already seen these mutants. We can't let her escape, because so basically, she'll tell everybody about that. And pretty much in their own language. They're clearly saying that in their own language so that she won't know what they're saying. And she won't realize what's going on. So they promise her they're going to help. They're not. They're going to feed her to the mutants to be killed. They throw her into this dark cell against her own will. Pretty much, yeah, this dark cell where the mutants are kept in. She calls out in the dark. And all the mutants pretty much swarm her. And that's the end of the film. Cuts to black. You can obviously bet she dies. It's obvious she's dead. Just calls who's there, mutants show up, the end. Yeah, that's the theatrical film of the ending. It's such a stupid fucking plot twist. All these zombies were... No, guess what? Yeah, they're going to end it with them saying they were escape patients. And they're going to end with some military bullshit. Let's try to be some Resident Evil plot twist. They're patients. We have to cover this up. Yeah, that's not cool. That's not shocking. That's just that is a lazy cop-out to end a horror film with military saying we can't let you leave, so we have to kill you. That's a fucking cop-out ending. That's not cool and that's not shocking or creative. But apparently, there was an alternate ending of the film where after Amanda is unconscious, she was going to be in a dark hospital room. And apparently now, obviously infected with radiation poisoning, starting to become a mutant in a hospital. Apparently, but either way, either ending, the credits then roll. Now the credits song by Marilyn Manson, I think, is actually a nice song. I'm not gonna lie. That's actually pretty nice. I do like the song from Marilyn Manson of the credits. It's a pretty dope song, I'll admit that. Now, here's the thing. If this film is done by a director that knew how to do horror and had a Silent Hill-like approach, this could work. But they picked the dumbest person to do it. A guy that's never done a film in his life, and never did any movies after this, clearly, and not ended on some stupid, it was the military all along. They were all patients from a facility. Instead of ending it like that. Because that's such a stupid ending. But it's impossible for really me even give a shit about these people. They made stupid choices. They went to a forbidden area they were told not to go to. You're warned to not trespass. If you're warned to not... Guys, if you are warned to not trespass on private property, you don't. You listen and you go back where you came from. That'd be like trying to trespass onto, a train base where the trains would come. Imagine trying to trespass into that. Yeah, how much trouble would you get in? A lot. So, these guys kind of got what they fucking deserved. They didn't listen and they paid the price. If Chernobyl Diaries even has any good qualities I can think of, the bear scene is kind of cool. I'll give the film props for that. And if it was done in a less insulting way, this could have worked if it had actually good directors involved. But whatever. It doesn't matter because it's ended up being shitty anyway. So in short, Chernobyl Diaries is a horseshit combination of both Wrong Turn and The Hills Have Eyes, just set in Chernobyl. Just go watch those two movies because those are actually well directed and good. So in the end, guys, horseshit Diaries needs to be avoided at all costs unless you want to watch a low-budget horror about a bunch of idiots proving how dumb they are to even live by entering a place they're not supposed to enter and getting killed off one by one. Anyways, guys, that's it for my epic rant on Chernobyl Diaries. If you're wondering how to rate Chernobyl Diaries, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, all this is a lazy ripoff of two better movies that did this concept better and directed this way better. So go watch those two horror films I mentioned and do not watch this lousy low-budget crap. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rate Chernobyl Diaries, I'm going to give Chernobyl Diaries a 2 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. We made it through all the rants. Alright guys, the rants for Halloween horror over. Don't worry, we can finally get back to good movies now. Because our last two episodes, we're going to end it with 2 George A. Romero remakes. One of them was for his first film he did, and the final episode will be for the one that Zack Snyder kicked off his career with. Yeah, the Night of the Living Dead remake and the Dawn of the Dead are the next 2 final episodes. So I'm excited to do those remakes. And ironically, Dawn of the Dead, the original, closed off last year's season, and ironically now the remake is going to close off this year's season. And ironically, we reviewed both the originals last year. I think last year we reviewed both the originals. Yeah, we reviewed Night of the Living Dead last year, and we're now reviewing the remakes this season. So that's kind of ironic. But yeah, for those who have or even have bothered to see Chernobyl Diaries, tell me in the comments down below. And until then, that will be it for this epic rant. Thank you all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.